In one of the responses that we got back from the MOD, it said that it is, quote, not always easy to distinguish between training and operations. Is that something you stand by?
It depends on the nature of the training. I think, as we've just discussed, over, for example, EOD training, training at Lympstone and other general training, there are distinctions, but equally elsewhere, when it moves to that phase of hazardous training, where we are specifically trying to train ahead of operations to have that seamless transition, then there are difficulties, yes.
But individuals who operate and conduct these operations and go on these courses and selections, we all know if we're on training or operations. We know whether it's an operation or whether it's training. It's pretty obvious. And when we ask you for the statistics around this, you break it down into operations or training. So why would a response come back to the committee saying the blokes don't know if they're on training or operations?
Well, I think there may be some confusion here. I think the point that's being made is that if you are on, for example, a rifle, a fixed target rifle range, firing your weapon in that environment, that's one thing. It's probably slightly different when you are then moving to, I think it's level 4 field firing, where you're on fire and manoeuvre, and it's a very different, and you're actually firing and manoeuvring your weapon with live ammunition. That's as close as you get to operational training.
Yeah, but it's still training, isn't it?
Yes, but that's
there's no one coming the other way.
No, but the point yes, but there's a greater risk, isn't there? And
of course.
I think probably the clear definition as you're reading into it isn't what was implied. I think there's that transition through training from a very controlled environment, which is clearly quite different, to the hazardous training immediately prior to operations, when you're seeking to simulate as close as is possible operations. And I'm not suggesting that we're trying to make that differentiation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just difficult because obviously the MOD is very clear when someone's on operations, when they're not on operations, and then if we get a response back from the MOD saying that the blokes don't know whether they're on operations or whether they're training,
right.
I think slightly bizarre.
Well, my gut reaction to that, Mr. Mercer, is that that's a misinterpretation of what was meant. I've tried to explain my interpretation of it.
Okay, I mean, the issue that I've got with this, and you know, I must say that clearly with the evidence we've seen, a lot of this is personality driven, and things have changed. Things have really come on leaps and bounds. It's fantastic. But there are very clear points in this, and you know, just remembering, you know, some of my own experiences on course I was on before me, a guy died, and in that inquiry, they said, look, these beacons are not fit for purpose. You need to change these beacons, right? And no one does anything about it at all. And then I leave the military, and 2 years later, 3 guys die. And they say, yeah, the beacons are crap. Are rubbish, and we need to do something about the beacons. And there just seems to be the problem, I guess, that we've got on the committee and that the families feel is this total inability to police yourselves as an organisation. And it happens time and again that you court-martialed 2 captains around a dry suit that you knew was inherently dangerous, and it was recommended to withdraw. 2 years that took to withdraw that, 2 more people died. And I'm sure you sort of understand where the committee and where the families are coming from in terms of learning those lessons is so slow, and it doesn't happen until you come here and all the dirty washing is hung out in public. And there's no point sort of saying that the MOD doesn't care or whatever, because I know there's individuals who work really hard in there and take this personally. But you must see it from the other side of the fence. It looks, if this was a private organisation who not killed its people, but its people died on practicing unsafe practice that had been found to be unsafe, the company would go bust and the directors would go to prison.
Well, of course we take it very seriously, and I'm pleased at your comments, but that is pleased at the comments that you think the situation is proving. But that is precisely why the DSA was set up from the 1st of April last year, to try to address the very points which you are raising, and the general consensus seems to be that positive progress is being made. But let me be absolutely clear, nobody is resting on their laurels, which is why we have a number of internal reviews going on at the moment with a intention of seeking constant improvement. I certainly am determined that we should constantly strive to improve the processes that we have, learn the lessons, Air Marshal Garwood has described some of the processes that we have in place to learn those lessons and, crucially, ensure that they are implemented.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's that implementation stage which is so important.
Yeah, and it's pretty, clearly from April when this was set up, and Mr. Air Marshal Garwood came in, things have changed. And I would just encourage you in this. There is, in my experience, which was across the plethora of military activities, this idea that you can't talk about or regulate SMU training is a myth. It's actually about professionalism, and it's about looking after people. And I know that you understand that here, but there is, this idea that running across the hills in Wales with weight is some sort of trade secret that we shouldn't regulate and look into and make sure is done properly is just substandard. And I would really encourage, the way a lot of these families feel is that we kind of put the shutters up, it's SF, march on by. Whereas those of us who've done that know that it's just military training and it's about professionalism. And if you are asking people to operate in that top percentile, then the controls and the people doing it need to be that much better to look after these people who go through this process. And I would just really encourage you to not take any of that and get stuck in. I've seen it for myself, the way this operates,
but I think,
as have a lot of people.
If I may, I hear what you say. I think there is a slight misconception here that somehow, because it is special forces, they can do just what they want, when they want, and there is no control and there's no regulation and no one is seeking to constantly check that the training methods they utilise are appropriate and safe. Absolutely they are. And I think we can offer you some reassurance about that. There's been a number of ongoing reviews at the moment within that world to seek to minimise risk as much as we possibly can. But then there is a difference between following that process and then necessarily putting it in the public domain.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you would allow me, and you want me to offer reassurance to the committee that those various reviews and processes in a determination to drive down the risk are ongoing, absolutely. Yeah. It is with some regret, for reasons I've tried to explain, we simply can't put that into the public domain.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, it's not, of course it's about us being happy and so on, but that is taken straight from the families as to how they feel about their offspring who they signed off to go and do these courses. And when it comes to SMU training, you're absolutely right. There are some things that you will not put in the public domain because you could put mosaic pieces together and come up with a capability that you want to keep as a capability. But what's being talked about here around basic learning lessons that we've seen does not in any way encroach into that operation.
No, absolutely. I think we are arguing the same point, and yeah. I say it with some frustration, given my principle of transparency, that we are unable, yeah. And I have been moved to a position where I agree that we are unable to put this in the public domain, starting from a position where I'd like to. But that does not exclude or offer any form of excuse when it comes to our sort of duty of care to ensure that that training is properly regulated, designed, reassessed, and evaluated to ensure that it's delivered with minimum risk to our service personnel.
Okay, Madeline, briefly.
Can we have a categoric assurance